No, there's no two sides. One of them is a nuclear power, and one of them is a
Yes.
militant. So then you push them back. It's really about they want to either blackmail you, intimidate you, put you down, try to get a different answer. If you really stand your ground, they have no choice but actually not just to come back in the middle, but even to go push back in their side.
Do you think a difference is being made this time around?
Yes, I think it is. Because one of the biggest differences, Mehdi, is this whole thing about anti-Semitic thing. You're anti-Semitic. It doesn't faze people anymore. It doesn't scare people anymore. It's actually became one of the most laughable accusations.
In today's video, Bassem Youssef absolutely shocks Mehdi Hasan with brutal facts about Gaza on Mehdi Hasan's show. While Mehdi Hasan is well known for his strong pro-Palestinian stance, Bassem Youssef brings in a unique and often unexpected perspective, challenging not only the mainstream narrative but also some of Mehdi Hasan's own assumptions. What makes this conversation so compelling is that it's not a shouting match, it's a healthy discussion rooted in facts, history, and genuine concern for human rights. So let's dive in and watch how Bassem Youssef shocks Mehdi Hasan on the Mehdi Hasan show.
Anti-Semitic, when you use...
When Chuck Schumer is accused of being anti-Semitic, the most senior Jewish member of the United States government, hardcore supporter of Israel, when you use that on Chuck Schumer, it loses all value. And can I just add something here? I actually am not happy about anti-Semitism losing value because anti-Semitism is horrible. It's a real problem in our society. It's actually on the rise in the United States of America, where we live. And the problem is, if you throw it willy-nilly everywhere, if you throw it at every Israel, then when the real anti-Semites are marching, Jews will not replace us. When they're marching in the street, when they're attacking synagogues, unfortunately, it won't have the same value because it's been used on Chuck Schumer. It's being used on Palestinian. Let me ask the big question that's hanging over all of this. Why do you care?
Honestly, I didn't care before October 7th. Or didn't care. I thought that this, like the Palestine-Israeli conflict is a chronic conflict, and it's never going to happen because even the Arab states are not even like supporting Palestine. They're all, most of them are complicit. There's no point. But after October 7th, and when I started to educate myself, as I told you, my knowledge was below average. And I said, like, how is this happening? This is beyond human. And some of the things that's happening, people don't talk about. Like, we talk about humans, but we don't talk about land. There's two things I want to talk about: environment and agriculture. Right now, because of what's happening in Gaza, the environment in Gaza is, I think one of the things that Israel is trying to do is making Gaza totally uninhabitable by humans. There is so much asbestos and so much heavy metals, and you can see that the air on Gaza is different. The way that they have they bombed in, like, the amount of bombs they bombed in 6 days more than America bombed in 1 year on
Iraq.
It's crazy. So all of that bombs and all of that nitrate and all of that white phosphorus and all of that actually, Gaza now is really unlivable. It makes it impossible for people to come back. But before that, remember how Israel is promoting itself all around the world as like they're making the desert bloom. We have the best. They don't tell you that they use the Palestinian land as a dumping ground. All of the sewage, all of this, they dump it into the Palestinians. Palestinians are not allowed to have any agricultural land outside of Area C, which is the most fertile in all of the West Bank. Palestinians are not allowed to dig for wells. They're not allowed to dig to expand their wells. They're not allowed, even if they would put rain cisterns to collect rainwater, it's being removed by the occupation. Not even allowed to collect rainwater.
While Mehdi Hasan rightly points out the dangerous misuse of the term anti-Semitism to silence criticism of Israel, something that risks dulling the meaning of a word that should carry serious weight, Bassem Youssef goes further. He reflects on how his own views were transformed after October 7th, when he finally took the time to deeply research the situation on the ground in Gaza, and what he found was horrifying. One of the most powerful parts of this discussion is when Bassem Youssef breaks away from the usual political or humanitarian framing and focuses instead on the environmental and agricultural destruction that's rarely covered in the media. He talks about how the Israeli military's bombing campaigns have left Gaza soaked in toxins, from asbestos to heavy metals and white phosphorus. making the air itself hazardous to breathe. He cites that in just 6 days, Israel dropped more explosives than the US did in an entire year in Afghanistan. That's not just unsustainable, it's apocalyptic. And then there's the land. Palestinians in the West Bank are barred from accessing Area C, which holds the most fertile soil. They're not allowed to dig new wells, expand existing ones, or even collect rainwater. Israeli settlements, meanwhile, benefit from this agricultural richness while using Palestinian land as a dumping ground for sewage and waste. So much for the desert bloom narrative. Bassem Youssef's point reminds us that occupation isn't just about checkpoints or borders, it's about choking off every aspect of life, including the right to breathe clean air and grow food.
And there is like a very interesting story. Have you ever heard about the only Palestinian mushroom farm?
No.
It's called the Amuru Mushroom Farm. It was 10 years ago. There was no mushrooms other than Israeli mushrooms. It was the white-capped mushroom. It's edible. It's not that kind of mushroom.
It's not that kind of mushroom. Let's just clarify.
It's good white-capped mushroom. And there was no Palestinian, only Israeli mushrooms. And then a group of Palestinians, and they were actually tech engineers. They didn't know anything of farm. They taught themselves how to farm. They had to revive ancient methods to collect water and to agriculture. And they started to actually do this mushroom farms. And they from one farm they had more than 30 or 40% of the market. So what did the Israelis do? They started to hold their spore shipments from the Netherlands, the one that they used to plant them, in their ports in the Ashdod port, and they would put them for month and month and month and month, crippling the business. So there's a ways of occupation other than there's the brutality, there's the killing, there's the taking of the land, but there's other ways. They are destroying the land. They are removing any kind of hope for those people to be in the land. Do you know, of course, about the black goat?
No.
The black goats is indigenous for Palestinian land, and it is just like made for this kind of environment. And in 1950s, they banned black goats. And then a few years ago, if you remember, there was like huge wildfires in Palestine because those white goats are not equipped to eat the dry leaves. So they started to, okay, we can allow you to have black goat again. They, as a matter of fact, they had to prevent Palestinians to get za'atar, to collect za'atar. It's wild, and they started to actually to have people that have za'atar, to give them more fines. So all of these little, not even microaggressions, these are macroaggressions. They are actually making Palestinians' life unlivable in this place. We don't talk about that because there's so much killing and so much atrocities. We even don't talk about what they do in the land.
You're right. In any other conflict, we would be focusing on that. But as you say, it's kind of list item number 17
maybe if
on
you
the
talk
list
to
of
the West
atrocities.
about the environment, maybe they would listen.
No, because look what's happened. Look what's happened to Greta Thunberg when she's spoken out in Palestine. Suddenly, nobody supports her climate change activism.
Bassem Youssef's contribution here really stands out because he shifts the focus from just the violence and politics to the land itself. Take the story of the Amuru mushroom farm. It's not just a farm, it's a symbol. Palestinians, many of whom were tech engineers with no agriculture background, started the West Bank's first and only mushroom farm after realizing they were entirely dependent on Israeli-grown mushrooms. That might sound small, but think about what it means to reclaim that kind of basic food sovereignty. And they did it under impossible conditions: limited water access, zero institutional support, and the need to revive ancient irrigation techniques just to keep crops alive. But then, predictably, the Israeli authorities sabotaged it. They deliberately held up spore shipments, which are essential to mushroom farming, for months at ports like Ashdod, crippling the business. That's not just red tape, that's targeted economic warfare. And that's the broader point Bassem Youssef is making. The occupation doesn't only come in the form of walls and checkpoints. It's in the agriculture bans, the water restrictions, and the deliberate destruction of local ecosystems. He even mentions how Israel banned black goats. animals native to the region and essential for grazing in dry climates, because white European goats introduced as replacements couldn't handle the terrain. The result? Wildfires and environmental degradation. Palestinians aren't just being displaced, the land itself is being destroyed in ways that ensure it can't sustain life, even if people could return.
I just want to circle back. We talked about the media. You said you think things are changing. What was your reaction when you saw Rami Youssef, our friend on SNL, talk about the freedom of the Palestinian people and the crowd cheering, applauding, I think 7 seconds straight? That was a moment on SNL there in the middle of New York, was it not?
This shows you that there's a huge separation, disconnect between the people and the media and the political elite. And it starts like sounding as if you're reading 1984. What the speakers are telling you, but what the people actually think. It doesn't matter what you think. We are with Israel. How is it? But people in this like, this is wrong. It's like, no, we should continue that. That is every time you see marches in the thousands and the hundreds of thousands, and then you see the media, that as if they are completely disconnected. They want to tell you, as long as we tell you this is true, you have to believe that. This 7 seconds applause. The people coming to Congress, people say, how the hell you're doing? This is a complete disconnect. How is this a democracy if your representatives don't even empathize by their, when you have someone like, what's his name, the guy who lost his legs?
Brian Mast.
Brian Mast, yeah. Brian Mast. When he said like...
Wore IDF uniform to Congress.
He didn't just wear IDF uniform. He said like there's no Palestinian innocent kids.
Yeah.
They should
Nazis.
and there would be more of them should be destroyed. That kind of vitriol.
But who did they censor in Congress? The Palestinian woman.
Rashida Tlaib. By the way, what Rami did was actually brilliant, because he said, my friend called me and he said, please pray for my dog.
Yes. Genius.
And then he said, I pray for the Palestinian, I pray for the hostages, and please God, please help the dog. So it's just like because Americans will maybe react for a dog's pain more than Palestinians, which is very brilliant, but very, very painful.
He's painful and he's a comedic genius. Okay, so people expect Rami to do that. People expect you to take on Piers Morgan. People hear me on MSNBC when I was on there, or Ayman Mohyeldin, and would say, okay, look, the brown Muslim folks are speaking up. What about when the white liberals do speak up? And I'm thinking of old friend of yours, Jon Stewart, on The Daily Show, back on The Daily Show, doing a lot of coverage of this conflict. John Oliver did a brilliant monologue right at the start. I think he was one of the first to kind of break the dam post-October 7th. How do you interpret what they are doing?
So John Oliver did a good piece, but even in that piece, and I understand it was 4 months ago, it has to be said about like, oh, but Hamas didn't accept any kind of peace and they went and killing. And so, okay, we have to accept that. Jon Stewart, since 2009, and when he did these pieces about Israel, he was always been someone who would go outside of the path that is drawn for everybody else. But maybe the last piece that he did about Gaza, I mean, it left me wanting. I mean, I appreciate him going, but and he started the piece very strong about talking about like us Americans giving the arms of Israel and how like we should stop that. But then the rest of it started to dilute the guilt to involve everybody. And then it started about like the Arab nations, and started about the UN being dysfunctional, about the Security Council, and we all know that all of these don't matter. It's really
right
about,
now, none of them matter. I mean, I agree. They all have blame to take.
Yes, of course.
But right now, they're not the ones killing 32,000 people.
But you don't. But like you don't. It's really about America and Israel. Nothing else. The UN is by design is made dysfunctional.
Now there's a part about white liberal voices, people like Jon Stewart and John Oliver. Bassem Youssef's honest here too. Yes, they're saying more than others, but even they sometimes soften the criticism. Stewart's recent segment on Gaza, Bassem notes, started strong, calling out US arms deals, but then started spreading blame around the UN, Arab states, the broader system, and while those points aren't wrong, Bassem's argument is that they dilute the focus. Right now, the violence is coming from a US-backed military campaign. That's where the urgency should be. And he's right. According to Oxfam and Amnesty International, tens of thousands of people have been killed in Gaza, the majority of them civilians, many of them children. Meanwhile, the US continues to send weapons and shield Israel diplomatically at the UN. The dysfunction of international bodies is real, but the US uses its veto power in the Security Council to block even the mildest calls for ceasefire. That's not dysfunction, that's design. Bassem Youssef isn't just venting, he's demanding clarity. In a media landscape obsessed with balance, he's asking for truth. And increasingly, audiences are listening, not just in Gaza's solidarity spaces, but on mainstream platforms like SNL. That's the shift, and Bassem Youssef is helping lead it.
Pause. Are you getting tired of getting half the story from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing, and another says the complete opposite. How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, left, right, and center are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights into media bias and political trends. Stay informed, think for yourself, and check out ground news in the description down below.